The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Monarch Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN, get a 50% bonus up to $1,000. What's up with them? Reminder that they are the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get a 7 free trial today. Booking to sports.com, RATHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Friday afternoon, roughly 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on January 24th. I'm also Scott Reichel once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the final Aussie Open episode that we're going to have of the year, because it is time to get into the men's final. So we're going to break down the matchup between Sinner and Zverev, taking place on the 26th at around 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So yes, we are very early to the party. Point is, though, we do have lines already, so I figured why not? I had some free time, so might as well get it out of the way. Time to get into the actual preview of the final. Should be a fun matchup. I'll break it down in more depth in a second. For that, though, do want to quickly recap what happened in the semis, both for lock and dog picks and for the actual matches as a whole. Starting off with the actual recap of the lock and dog. Now, for the women's semifinal matches, those were not good, as we did lose the lock and dog. However, did much better on the men's side, ended up going undefeated. Did not sweep because there was a retirement, but point is, though, did win the lock with Sinner in straight sets at minus 150 as he beat Shelton 7-6, 6-2, 6-2. Now, at first glance, if you did not watch the match, you'd assume that Sinner dominated because he ended up winning the last two sets comfortably. That was not the case. It was actually very close, and Sinner ended up falling behind a break twice in the first set. Got broken in the first service game, then Sinner broke in the 5-5 game, actually, to serve it out for the first set. So our lock was actually on the ropes, and then Sinner eventually did fight off some set points, got the break, and then won the tiebreak. And at that point, the match was over. So Sinner came through as he won in straight sets, cashed the minus 150. Can't complain there. For the dog, picked up a push as we had Djokovic to win the match and both players to win a set at plus 164. They had a marathon first set, which took about an hour and 20. Zverev did win the first set, and Joker ended up retiring. So since there was a retirement, they ended up voiding the prop. So overall, once again, an undefeated episode, but not a sweep. So slight difference there, but can't complain. You got a refund for the dog, and you picked up a nice win if you backed the lock. So getting into the actual recap of the semis. Before we actually do that, I'll go into greater depth on what you can do to support the show. A reminder, you can show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So YouTube, I think we're in the 720s now for subscribers, trying to get to 1K, I'd say, by the, we'll aim for June. We'll go for 1,000 subscribers by June. So once again, hopefully you can help us out there by spreading the podcast, I'd say, name, and trying to get more people to join the show, or to at least enjoy the content from the show. A reminder, every pick is free. So once again, if you want to compare it to other podcasts and other, I'd say, tipsters on Twitter that actually charge for picks, I guarantee you my record stacks are pretty well against them, and it's all free. So once again, check that out if you want to support the show. And a reminder, you can also check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great tennis merchandise on the actual website. We have, once again, shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, all high quality, all affordable. And there's also a great promo going on for the big game, because if you do want to get yourself some merchandise, not just for this show, but for the other shows, the NBA show, MLB show, WNBA show, maybe even the college experience, in honor of the big game, from now until February 9th, 15% off everything in the SGPN merch store with the promo code Big Game. So once again, if you want to get something on the merch store, great time to actually purchase something, because you can get 15% off everything on the merch store with the promo code Big Game. So once again, a time to actually get into the recap of the semis here. The two matches we ended up seeing on Thursday night - Friday morning. So starting off with the actual first match that we're going to talk about. The retirement heard around the world because Joker ended up having a very fun first set against Zverev. Lost it, though, in a tiebreak, and you ended up seeing Joker hit the last ball into the net. Then, I'm watching it on ESPN's broadcast, by the way, so maybe other broadcasts were better at noticing this. I did not notice Joker quit, because they went to the net, and you figure, okay, they're changing over. Joker's kind of messing with his bag a little bit. You figure, okay, maybe he's trying to maybe get another hat. He had a hat on for part of the first set as well. You figure maybe he's trying out a new racket. Who knows? Typical, tennis player actual bag stuff. And then a message pops up on the ESPN broadcast. Novak Djokovic retired. And my mind was blown, because that first set was very competitive, and it felt like it could have gone either way. And then eventually you saw Zverev get over the finish line, barely, by winning that first set in the breaker. And Joker said, you know what, I can't continue. And he ended up quitting. So it's the second Grand Slam that he's actually retired from over the last year. You might remember he withdrew from the French Open after his 5-set marathon win against Cerundolo right before the matchup against Ruud. So Joker has been retiring a bit more in Grand Slams lately, which is also a sign that his body's starting to deteriorate, which is not a shock because he's already up there in years. Point is, though, it was definitely a pretty, I'd say, it was just a sour ending to what was the makings of a potentially great match. It was an hour and 20 for one set. Assuming Joker was somewhat healthy, or at least healthier than we thought, that could have easily been a 4 or 5 hour epic. Like, that was on pace to be a phenomenal matchup, and instead we ended up seeing Joker end up retiring with an injury after one set in a pretty anticlimactic finish. Now, I'll get into the overall crowd reaction to that in a second. I'll break down the other semifinal matchup, then I'll do a brief rant for the actual, I'd say, culmination of that Joker match. But either way, I see some people in the comment section. Savage Beamer saying that he had money on Zverev. Yeah, once again, if you got through the first set, most books paid the money lines out. So if you ended up having a Zverev money line, you should have cashed. A reminder, shop around, make sure you read the house rules on tennis. But Zverev ended up winning a set, which is usually the minimum requirement to pay out moneyline bets. So Savage saying that he ended up winning. So overall, nice win for you there. Sinner 3-0. You also won there. Once again, Ian joined me there. So hopefully a lot of you did join me on the actual Sinner lock there at 3-0. Joker was refunded, yes. So that is kind of how it works for some books. Ian, I don't know what book you actually betted on, but I do know that if you want to bet money lines for tennis, a lot of books besides Bet365 will pay out fully on the win if there's a retirement. But I know that FanDuel in particular does refund all retirement losers. For example, if you bet somebody and they quit in the second set, FanDuel will refund you for your actual loss there on the money line. So keep that in mind. Other books might do that too, but I know FanDuel for a fact does it. So most of my money line bets on tennis will be FanDuel. Just full disclosure, because I do like their retirement rules the most out of all the books. That is kind of one thing I want to mention. Not sure what book you ended up taking it on, Ian, but once again, Joker moneyline bettors got refunded. Zverev moneyline bettors got paid. So it worked out in pretty much everyone's favor. And of course, my dog ended up being refunded as well on FanDuel for the Djokovic win with both players to win a set. So everything worked out in your favor. Once again, if you ended up getting screwed over by the retirement rules and you got refunded for Zverev moneyline, you should read the house rules. There are a lot of books available, whether they are legal or offshore, that will pay out in that situation. So once again, keep that in mind. You can find alternatives. Make sure to read the house rules and make sure you don't get screwed over by these sportsbooks rules in the fine print in the future. Just once again, a piece of advice there. But anyway, time to get into the actual recap of the Sinner match. That match was very competitive, despite looking pretty straightforward, because Sinner once again won the final two sets 6-2, 6-2. Shelton called out the trainer. Felt like Shelton was starting to mentally check out in the second set after he choked away the first set. And then the third set was close. Sinner won a pretty long game there, which was a pretty decent hold there. Sinner fought off a break point in the 1-1 game, and then he ended up fighting off 2 break points in the that was the 0-1 game. He fought off a break point and won in a couple deuces. Then Shelton had a couple break points, 15-40 in the 1-2 game. Sinner ended up holding, and it felt like at that point Shelton was on the court for too long in between changeovers with the injury, and Shelton immediately got broken. Then Sinner broke him again, and eventually Sinner did win the last 5 games of the match to go from 1-2 to 6-2 in that third set. Now, overall, first of all, props to Shelton. I'm not going to roast him. He played very well, made it to the semis, played a lot of sets of tennis, played at a high level, and unfortunately for him, Sinner went God mode, and it felt like just Shelton was outclassed as the match went on. Now, I said before, we were pretty lucky to actually win the lock because Shelton got a break to serve out the first set, and in fact, he had a couple of set points in that first set, and he blew it. So yes, Sinner came through for us. Not easy at all. First set took an hour and 11, but you saw, once again, Shelton have 2 separate set points in the 6-5 game, did not convert, ended up losing the game, and then fell behind 5-0 immediately in the tie break. So once Shelton blew those 2 set points in the first set, the match was over. That's kind of how it went. It felt like it was a spot where Shelton had a chance to seize overall momentum and to make it interesting. And you saw Sinner looking a little bit tired early on. You'd wonder if he had fully recovered from what seemed to be pneumonia, according to reports of what happened against Rune. You also had him cramping later on in that match as well. Both guys were cramping in the third set of the semifinal match. But the point is, you ended up seeing Shelton blow his opportunities, and then you saw Sinner settle in, and at that point, the match was over. But I thought Shelton played well as a whole. He had a lot of variety. I thought that his serve was pretty solid in terms of switching up the kick serve out wide and the serve up the tee. I thought Shelton played as well as he possibly could. The issue was Sinner's a madman, and Sinner is on pace, in my opinion, to be an all-time great player on hard court. He could be an all-time great player in general, but on hard court, he has the makings of what could be a dominant run for over a decade. He is a machine on hard court. And the main thing that I thought was I think the main, factor that was kind of swaying how the match was playing out was the returns by Sinner. Because Shelton has a great serve. He's got a lot of variety. He can come to the net too. He defends his serve pretty well. However, Sinner felt like he was getting every single return in play. And Shelton has improved the rally tolerance. That's definitely not a strength of his game. We know that Shelton can rally for length, but he tends to want to point away. So he tends to try putting points away early. And Sinner was not giving him any freebies on the actual serve. Sinner got almost every return back in play. He limited the aces. He forced Shelton to hit extra balls, and that is not what Shelton wants to do. And you knew that as the rally progressed and as the rally got longer, Sinner had a drastic edge in those long rallies. But Sinner did a great job of returning, and I think that was what swayed the entire match. Because Shelton served well, and it didn't matter, because Sinner got every return back in play, and no matter how good the actual first serve was for Shelton, he had to rally for like 10-plus shots to win a point. And that was definitely what I noticed. I thought that Shelton did a great job of serving, but it didn't matter in the end because Sinner was so good returning. And Oscar pointed out as well, the baseline control was incredible. You know that Shelton was trying to overpower Sinner at times, and that just didn't work out. Sinner was able to redirect the power of Shelton. He was able to push Shelton around the court, and he was able to once again find himself in neutral rallies after really just finding ways to get the first serve back. And you saw Sinner with his long reach just get to everything. He went full wall mode, and that really is just tough for Shelton to match, and that's why Sinner was able to win that one in 3. Once again, Shelton serves well enough to get a break lead in the first set twice, and he couldn't convert. But Sinner, the main thing I noticed once that first set was playing itself out, the main thing I noticed was Sinner's getting a lot of returns in play, and that is not a good sign for Shelton. And that's how it played out because Sinner won in straight sets. So once again, Sinner, great job by him, winning once again what was a pretty difficult matchup, despite how the final scoreline looks. That was definitely dicey, and Sinner came through. So nice job by him, cashing us the lock there. Do want to go back, though, to the actual, elephant in the room, which was the Djokovic retirement and the crowd aftermath, because I have to mention it. Now, the initial reaction of Djokovic retiring was shock. And that's what I felt, because I thought Joker played well enough to win the first set, didn't do so. And you figure, okay, Joker's going to once again try to win a marathon, which could take 5 hours, and immediately ended up retiring. Now, the crowd responded, some with some shock, others started booing him. And this is where I had a problem, because I understand that the tickets were expensive. I get it. Tickets are probably less expensive than the Alcaraz quarterfinal match, but probably somewhere in the $800 range, maybe $1,000. And yes, it is a lot of money. And I understand that you pay for 2 matches and one match ends after a set. You're going to be annoyed. However, I don't think Djokovic went out of his way to retire in a match because he wanted to screw your experience over as a fan. Booing him is insanely classless and disrespectful. The guy's a 10-time champion. He's won the Australian Open multiple times with torn muscles. We saw that in, once again, his final match against Tsitsipas a couple years ago, where he had a serious injury, played through it and won. Joker is not the type of guy that is going to quit in a Grand Slam with minor injuries just to screw over the fans or just because he doesn't want to be there. That is not who Djokovic is. He's an all-time great competitor, and the fact is he's a 10-time champion in your arena. He was banned from your building. He was basically deported because of COVID a couple years ago too. So Australia has not been too kind to him over the years, and he's been an all-time great champion there. And the greatest player in Australian Open history because he got injured? Really? Like, that's what we're doing here? So I wanted to mention that. Classless by the fans. And I feel like that's something I ought to mention here. Really just a tragedy. I get the argument is, once again, you're upset in the moment because you wanted to see a great match and had the makings of a great match, and then Joker ended up getting injured and having to stop playing. But booing him is an insane amount of disrespect for the greatest player of all time. It's just really shameful. That's how it worked itself out, and I wanted to call them out for it. It was just a sickening display, in my opinion, from the fan base. And I wanted to point that out. Joker, I'm sure, wanted to continue. He mentioned it in the actual post-match press conference. He said if he won the first set, he might have continued for one more, gone from there. But he knew at some point he couldn't continue, and he decided to once again end the match prematurely, booing him as a 10-time champion, a guy that has once again owned the sport for about 15 to 20 years, and you respond that way? Damn, I thought that was very, very low from the Australian fan base. So I wanted to mention that. Once again, Johnny mentioned, and that's more fuel for the media fires. You're not wrong. I do wonder how the Australian media is going to handle that situation. But I think we'd all agree, whether you wanted Djokovic to continue or not, booing him when he's been battling an injury and just beat Alcaraz in the previous match in a 4-set war, I think is extremely harsh, and I think that people should be more, they should be kinder to Djokovic's overall situation. I saw other people commenting on Twitter talking about how Joker should have quit against Alcaraz because he was going to quit against Zverev, which is insanely stupid. Because one, you have a couple days off in between. Second of all, he was healthy enough to beat Alcaraz, so why would he quit? Like, I don't understand that argument. Some people were making the argument that he should have quit against Alcaraz, which is insanely stupid. But I wanted to mention it. I thought that it was very, very poor, I'd say a poor display from the Australian fans, and I wanted to call them out for it. It's a joke. I wanted to mention that in particular. Also, once again, Oscar saying that Joker is the best of all time. It actually, just in general, for taking care of his health, I think it's insane. Wanted to mention it, though, that Australia, I think the crowd messed up there, and I wanted to call them out individually for it in a separate section, because I think that they deserve to be roasted for it. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual recap of the semis. Time to get into the preview of the final here between Sinner and Zverev. Forward to that, though, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings, because DraftKings is a great place to bet in the NFL playoffs. A couple games coming up this Sunday in the conference title games with the AFC and the NFC. A reminder, you can also bet on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You can bet on touchdown scores as well. And a reminder, you can win big by betting on touchdowns. And a reminder that if you want to place your first bet, DraftKings does have a great promo for you. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So once again, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets. No questions asked. Great deal in general if you are new to the platform. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the promo code SGP. Code SGP for new customers. Get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. DraftKings, once again, the only place with that offer. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the semis. Time to move on into the main event, the final, the men's final of the Australian Open. A reminder, if you do want the women's final, I did it already. So if you want my thoughts on the Keys matchup against Sabalenka, check out the episode before this one. I already did the women's final if you were interested in finding that. Now, for the actual preview of the matchup here, Sinner is a decent favorite, minus 280. Zverev is plus 240 for the spread here, minus 4.5 for Sinner, plus 4.5 for Zverev. The over-under is around 39 or 40, give or take. For the actual set spread here, you have Sinner minus 1.5 sets at minus 130. Zverev plus 1.5 sets at even money. Sinner in straight sets is available at plus 220. Use Zverev to win in straight sets if you were going to go really bold here at 10-1. The over 3.5 sets is minus 190. The over 4.5 sets is plus 220. Now, for the head-to-head, it has been very competitive. In fact, it's actually been favorable for Zverev. So Zverev is currently ahead 4-2 in the head-to-head. Now, they faced off in Cincinnati last year in that marathon semifinal matchup, which Sinner did win in a final set breaker. This has been the U.S. Open 2023. Zverev did win that one in 5. Monte Carlo, Zverev did win in 3. U.S. Open 2021, Zverev did win in straight sets. So in the head-to-head, Zverev's actually won 4 of the last 5 meetings. Now, we know Sinner has definitely blossomed into the best player in the world, so he wasn't exactly at that level, with the exception of the Cincinnati match, which Sinner did win. So Zverev was doing very well in the head-to-head, but that was before Sinner kind of hit a certain gear that he didn't have previously. But still beating him in 5 sets in the U.S. Open is impressive, nonetheless. Now, the point is, Zverev has been good in the head-to-head. A lot of marathons. Each of the last 3 meetings went to a deciding set, whether it was a 2 out of 3 or a 3 out of 5. So both of these guys have kind of killed each other over the course of the last couple years in particular, and you do wonder if it's going to be a marathon match for the final once again. Now, Zverev's path has been interesting because he won the first 3 matches in straight sets. A reminder, he was battling a biceps injury. It's why I ended up passing on him in the quarter, and then I realized early on I messed up because Zverev's going to win the quarter, and he did. So it is what it is. Took I'd say an educated pass on Zverev with the injury concern, and he looked fully healthy for the event. So it is what it is. Took a swing there and missed. Now, a reminder as well, for the actual price, once again, minus 280 for Sinner. We already have Sinner to win the event. So we do have Sinner to win the entire tournament, and then we got that at plus 125. Pure chalk as the favorite, but once again, we had to go with it. He's the class of the hard court, I'd say, tour. And I did think that Sinner would make it to the final minimum, and he did. So we already have Sinner at plus 125. So once again, minus 280 is not a personal concern of ours, because if you ended up taking a Sinner pre-tournament, you have a pretty good price here to win the entire event. Now, for the actual head-to-head, once again, Sinner's had his number for the most part, or I should say, Zverev's had his number for the most part, but Sinner finally got, I'd say, revenge on that U.S. Open 5-set war as he ended up beating him in that marathon against Cincinnati. Now, I think that the Cincinnati match is a pretty good comp, actually, because you might remember Sinner was injured in that event, and he ended up winning, and then he parlayed that into a win in the U.S. Open. But he had the final against Tiafoe. But before that Zverev match, he was struggling a bit physically, and you were wondering if he was going to be able to get through it, and he was able to get by in an absolute war. A great match, one of the best matches of the season last year, as Sinner ended up winning 7-6, 5-7, 7-6. Absolute war. Point is, though, Sinner's proven in the past he can get by Zverev if he's below 100%. Now, Sinner had a pretty weird moment there in the Shelton match where he looked like he was exhausted, had some cramping issues in the 3rd set. We saw him battle pneumonia in the 4-set win against Rune a couple rounds ago. In between, he had an absolute just destruction against De Minaur, where he dominated and won that match comfortably. So Sinner, I think we'd agree, is not 100%, probably close to 80 if I had to guess, but he still looks very good. So I'll put it this way: the fact is there is no tennis match until the 26th at like 3:30 in the morning. So you have about a day and a half more of rest, which should definitely help out Sinner. So I do think that the rest advantage is going to work. I should say there is a little bit of a rest talking point for this overall match, because Sinner is going to have some time to fully recover, and maybe he will be 100% in the final. Maybe. We'll see. Point is, though, I think Zverev can keep this interesting. I think that minus 280 does feel a bit rich, actually, because of how Sinner's been playing and how, I'd say, he's looked a little bit compromised over the last couple rounds. I think that Zverev, historically speaking, can keep this match competitive. Now, the issue for Zverev, he's never won a Grand Slam title. He's been viewed as a choker historically, rightfully so. I think we'd all agree, for a guy that has been a top 3 player in the world before, you'd assume he should have won one by now. And now he has a chance to finally end the conversation to win his first Grand Slam title. Now, it's a good spot for him, because Joker, I would have picked to beat him. I did pick him to beat him, and then Joker ended up retiring. So Zverev had a pretty favorable outcome for him, not just for winning against an all-time great via retirement, but because the actual match was on pace for about 4 or 5 hours, and the match instead ended after a set. So Zverev kind of got, I'd say, a win-win there for, once again, the stamina conservation and for beating Djokovic via retirement. So it is a pretty good spot for Zverev to finally get the job done. The problem is Sinner, when he's even at 80%, is so tough to beat because he's so damn good on hard court. So I think for this matchup, I'll put it this way. I think Sinner's going to win, but I think it will be a war. I think Zverev's game plan should be to make the rallies as long as possible, try to tire out Sinner on court, and try to outlast him in what should be an absolute marathon match. That would be my game plan for Zverev. Now, Zverev's concern, though, in the Djokovic match and the Paul match, he was still very conservative on a couple of big points, especially the breakpoint chance against Djokovic, where we saw him look very passive, something he's always had issues with over the course of his career. He tends to not really go for it when he has chances. He tends to try to let the opponent self-destruct, trying to outlast the opposition, and because of that, he does get a little bit gun-shy in these spots, and we saw that again in the semifinal match against Djokovic. Didn't matter again, as he eventually won the first set anyway, but he got very conservative in a couple of break point chances, and he can't really afford to do that against Sinner. But I do think the overall passive nature of Zverev will work to his favor, actually, over the course of what could be 4 or 5 hours. I would personally drag this match out into deep waters. You dare Sinner physically to get the job done. We saw Sinner fall behind 2-0 against Medvedev in the final last year. I think that Zverev can find an opening, and I think that he's more alive than people think for this matchup because of Sinner's health, and I think because of Zverev's current form. Now, I'm still going to pick Sinner to win, because I do think he is the best hardcourt player, and I do think his firepower can push Zverev around at times around the court. But Zverev's proven he can handle Sinner to some degree, and he definitely can handle Sinner at 80%. The question is, will Zverev mentally be able to finally get over the hump and finally win a Grand Slam? I'm going to say no, but I'm going to go with the war here. I'll go with the over in games at around 40, and I am going to go with the Zverev plus 4.5 games here. I think it's pretty telling that Sinner to win, once again, in straight sets is plus 220. You're looking at the over 3.5 sets of minus 185, and Zverev to, once again, get plus 1.5 sets is even money. Sinner in 3 or 4 sets, the minus 1.5 sets, is only minus 130. The odds makers are giving Zverev a really good chance of keeping this very competitive and forcing a very long marathon. I agree. So based on that, I am going to go with the over, and I am going to go with the games here in favor of Zverev. I think you're looking at what should be a close matchup, which Sinner escapes, kind of like Cincinnati all over again, where Sinner wins, does not cover. He basically uses all of his energy to survive. But I do think Zverev will make Sinner earn it, and I think that Sinner will drop at least one set here. If you wanted my prediction, I'll go Sinner in 5. But I do think that Zverev will make it competitive, and I think that you're looking at a pretty low total for what should be a marathon. Both guys good at serving. You might get a breaker or two in there, and you are looking at, once again, 39.5 or 40 being pretty low for what could be a pretty long match. And once again, a reminder that each of the last 3 head-to-head meetings went to a deciding set. So historically speaking, these guys kill each other. I see a pretty similar story here. 4 sets minimum. Give me the over in this one as my favorite play for this matchup. I see Ian commenting about the potential alt lines here for the over. I don't hate it, honestly. I think you're looking at a spot where you might end up getting into the mid-40s, maybe even high 40s if you end up getting a couple breakers. But the Cincinnati matchup, yes, the pace of Cincinnati courts were very fast, the fastest on the entire tour last year. You still had 3 sets, each of them with 7-5 or 7-6. So I see a marathon here. Once again, I'll go with the over in this one. The ladder idea, I don't hate, honestly. I can see a pretty long match here with a couple breakers, but I think you're looking at what should be a pretty fun matchup that goes distance. I'll go with Sinner, but I am going to go with the over in this one as well. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual preview of the final between Sinner and Zverev. For the actual Lock and Dog picks, for that, though, I want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Nick Fantasy because they have a pick 'em, once again, overall opportunity on their platform. They have one of the biggest menus in all of sports. They have, once again, a lot of ways to make money easily with profit boosts and gimme pick'ems. They have the NFL, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. They have tennis as well. A reminder, you can also use specials and boosts on Netflix entries. For my entry, I'll go with Josh Allen, higher carries in this game, or higher rush attempts in his game against Kansas City. Think they'll use him a lot in short yardage, and of course, he is the best player on the team. Think the Bills will let him determine the outcome of the game by giving him a lot of opportunities to run in this game. A reminder, though, when you do sign up for your new account, use the promo code SGPN to claim a special confirmed time offer up to 1K bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. A reminder that if you want to try betting models, Rhythm can help you do so because Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps bettors with the ability to build models in seconds. You could try to build your own. You can copy over from the leaderboard, or you could also let Rhythm build one for you in seconds. And a reminder, you could also get props and picks from Rhythm in general. If you do want to try NFL picks, NFL props, college basketball, and the NBA, Rhythm has you covered. And a reminder, claim it for free for a week, $750 all day, by going to sportscam.com. So sportscam.com/Rhythm, sportscam.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished previewing the final between Sinner and Zverev. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go with the over in this match. Now, FanDuel went rogue. I noticed this a couple rounds ago. We did lose when we took this, but Joker against Makic, the line on FanDuel was roughly a game or two off of market, and it's the same thing here in the final. Every book has 39.5 or 40. FanDuel's just hanging 38.5 at -118. So I'll take the 38.5 on the over. That line will not be there. I think closer to match time, but 38.5 is too low. Now, every book I said before has the total of 39.5, so you're saving a game, no questions asked. Now, Zverev has lost at least one set in each of his last two completed matches, ignoring the Djokovic match because that was not fully completed, but he dropped a set to Paul, dropped a set to Humbert. He has been involved in a couple longer sets and a couple of sets that he has been a little bit shaky in. So I do think that Zverev will drop at least one set to the best hardcourt player on the planet. Now, as for Sinner, he has not looked that sharp physically over the matches, as he's not looked 100% with the pneumonia and with the cramping he had against Shelton. Yes, he won in straight sets against Shelton, but he should have lost the first set, was down to break twice. Shelton served for the set, had 2 set points. That could have definitely gone 4. And I think that Sinner, once again, was pretty fortunate to win that in straight sets. So I do think that Sinner maybe would dominate against Zverev if he's fully healthy, but I don't think he is. So I think that it's going to be a closer matchup. Now, each of the last 3 head-to-head meetings have been wars. Each of the last 3 head-to-head meetings went to a deciding set. So Cincinnati was a marathon. U.S. Open went to 5 sets. You saw a couple of wars, and I think that history repeating itself definitely has some value at -118. And I think with that being the case, the price just feels too good at -118. Ian mentioned before a ladder opportunity. I don't hate that, but I do think that for the 38.5, it's a very low total for 2 guys that are elite in the sport. Sinner is better, obviously, but it's #1 versus #2 in the world. It's a very solid match between 2 guys in great form. I think 38.5 is too low. I am going to go with the over. If it does not end in straight sets, you like your chances. The tiebreak line's at over 1.5 tiebreaks. So assuming you get a tiebreak and assuming you get 4 sets, you probably win the over almost guaranteed. So I do think you're looking at a spot where 38.5 is too low. Give me the over for my lock. For the dog, I am going to go with Sinner, but I do think Zverev once again will make it very interesting and will have moments to win the match outright. But I do think that Zverev, until he actually wins a Grand Slam, I will bet on him not to do so because that's worked more often than not. So once again, for the dog, I'm going to go back to the bread and butter. Give me Sinner to win the match and both players to win a set. I will double down on the over for this matchup at +134. Now, Sinner's -280, which might be a bit steep. I don't want to pay that. So I am going to go with an alternative option to reduce the juice. A reminder, though, that the over 3.5 sets here is -185. So I'm parlaying a -280 with a -185, and I am getting +134, which is, I think, a great price. So I'm going to go with that for this one. Sinner, though, I really just can't go against no matter how injured he is because he's won 23 straight matches. However, he's been dropping sets, dropped a set in 2 of the last 5. It should have been 3 of the last 5, but Shelton choked away the first set there in the last round. So Sinner, though, has won 23 straight hardcourt matches. He won the U.S. Open. He's been dominant, and I do think he should find a way to get enough returns in play. And I think he'll be able to really punish Zverev's, I'd say, questionable or underwhelming second serve, and that might be enough to win. But I do think that Sinner physically might drop off a level mid-match. I think that Zverev's good enough to win a set here, but I think that Sinner, once again, with his current form, with his overall, I'd say, upside, it's higher than Zverev's. I think that it's a great way of getting a minus 280 favorite at plus money. I'll go with that as my dog, especially based on the fact that each of the last 3 at-10 meetings went to, or I should say each of the last 3 at-10 meetings did not end in straight sets. So a similar script here in Cincinnati last year where Sinner was injured. He found a way to win anyway. I think it's pretty similar in this one. Give me Sinner to win and both players to win a set as my dog for this one. So once again, the play for the show, the lock's going to be on the over, 38.5 at minus 118 on FanDuel in the final between Sinner and Zverev. For my dog, I am going to go with Sinner to win the match and both players to win a set at around plus 134 on FanDuel. That's going to wrap it up. A reminder for the next episode, we are going to get into Montpellier. So we're going to get into one 250 tournament. There's only one event going on next week. We're going to break down Montpellier. You might remember that as the event we won a Bublik outright for last year. So we're going to get into that event in a couple days. Until next time, though, a reminder, you can find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show and the WNBA show as well. And a reminder, you'd also leave a like on the video. A reminder to subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. And a reminder, please leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.